I was standing in the shower after a long, hard day of work, just letting the cool water cleanse me of the sweat and the heat of the day. And I suddenly had thoughts in my mind that I knew were not my own thoughts. And so trying to determine if they were God speaking to me or just imagination or some evil spirit putting them there, I began to pray. And Jesus told me that these thoughts I was having were his way of showing me what would have happened to our country if Hillary had defeated President Trump, if she had won. And it concerns specifically the coronavirus 19 pandemic that we are all in. And the things that began to flood my mind were amazing to me. The first thing that impressed upon my mind was a specific number, and that number was 33,213,060. And as I just listened, uh, Jesus told me that that was the number of people who would have died in the United States if Hillary had been president. And I was shocked, and I said, how could this be? I mean, what would have happened to have changed the number of deaths from tens of thousands, which is bad enough, to tens of millions? And what he showed me was that they would have rushed a vaccine into the United States trying to protect what little economy would have been there, and that the vaccine would have actually been so poorly done that it would have caused the major spread of this coronavirus 19, that there would have been things in the vaccine. Not only would it have not built up our immunity and protected us from it, but that it would have broken down our immune systems and allowed the virus to run rampant and to be far more deadly than it actually has been. As I thought about this, he spoke to me very clearly and said, it's not the most interesting thing about that number. He said, add up the digits for the millions, and then for the thousands, and then for the hundreds. And I did very quickly in my brain, and you can do that too. 33 million, 33 would be 6. 213,000 is 6. And 60 is 6. And so I saw the number 666. And I asked, so is this virus, was it intended from the Antichrist? And he said, no, but it leads to the Antichrist because the people of the United States need to get accustomed to having the government put these kind of controls in their life so that we would be willing to accept and implant something within us as a protective measure, as a way of protecting us and helping us through these kinds of crises and this type of an emergency. And that this was supposed to have been, had Hillary won, a precursor that was intended to allow those of us who cherish freedom to such a degree that we might rebel to get used to the government forcing things like a vaccine or like an implant into us. When I was seeing this or catching this in my head, it's so hard to explain because it wasn't a vivid picture vision. It was thoughts in my head, but some of them were just so clear and descriptive that the vaccine that would have come would have been some kind of an implant that would be kind of a, how do I say it? I don't want to say a time release, but it would have been an ongoing vaccine. It wouldn't have just been a shot. It would have been an implant that would have slow released whatever they had put in it into our body system. And so it would have begun to get us used to having that done to us and having it being forced upon us from the government as a way of, air quotes, protecting us. The other thing that he showed me was that churches would have been targeted and held up as the places where this pandemic started, and all church activities would have been shut down completely for at least a year had Hillary won. Not only that, but Christians would have been ostracized as the people who were willing to sacrifice other people's lives just so that we could meet together and worship our God. Obviously, the way the media spins things, it would have been spun in such a way to show Christians in the most negative light possible. And so these are the things that specifically were pointed out to me as I stood and listened to these thoughts that Jesus was putting into my mind. And I know it's an odd way of looking at things to look into the past and to say, okay, what would have happened? Obviously, as a prophecy, it's one of those things that can never be proved or not even be shown to be correct unless some form of documentation or something were to be exposed that proves that. But this is what I was told by Jesus, and I am simply passing this on because I frankly, outside of telling friends and family, to be alert and to be prepared that the enemy is fighting hard to bring about a one world government, to bring about the kingdom of the Antichrist, and that we as Christians need to be very careful in these times of what we accede to and what we are willing to accept in the name of peace and security. And so I will leave it at that, and I will share anything else that I get with you. You can take it and evaluate it and pray over it and make decisions on your own. All of this in Jesus' name, and I ask him to take away anything that I have misspoken or misstated and to impart and impact these things that he has shown me into people's lives to strengthen and build up believers. And these things I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.